love to read? I do. Do you love to talk about books? I do. Do you love to keep up with book news? I do. Hey folks, welcome back. I'm DeShannon Lovin, your friendly librarian, and I am back with some book love, so let's chat. Some books that I have finished this week. Both of the books that I finished this week were not in physical books, so I don't have book covers to show you. But I finished The Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. I also finished Grin and Bearded by Penny Reid. I talk a lot about Penny Reid. She's one of my favorite authors. I read all of her books, either on ebooks or on audio from the library. Remember, with Penny Reid, you really do need to look her up on Goodreads because she has several series going on, and her series have characters that intertwine. Well, you meet characters that you've heard of before. In Grin and Bearded, the second book in the Winston Brothers series, it intertwines with the Knitting in the City series because it's still that Winston family. Penny Reid is definitely an adult romance author. She has this whole group of writers who write for her now, including her, but she calls them the Smarty Pants romance because they are smart romance. It's not Harlequin. Like, they're modern women. They're usually around that 20-something mark. It is a little racier at times, so you don't want to be listening to this in the car with the window down or anything, but they're super fun. This particular book is in that insta-love trope that we hear so much about these days, and I like that. So the main character, Sienna Diaz, she's a well-known actress, and she's come to a small town in Tennessee to film her movie that she has written. She did the screenplay for it, but she's also acting in it. So she comes to a small town, her car breaks down, the local park ranger, one of the Winston brothers, finds her and helps her on her way, and it's insta-love. What's not to love about insta-love? The local park ranger, Jethro Winston, I think he might be the oldest of the Winston brothers. I'm trying to remember Jethro's story. I know that he was not a good guy. He was in a lot of criminal activity and never actually got prosecuted for what he did wrong. He was following after his father's footsteps, if you know the Winston story. Their worlds could not be farther apart, but yet when they meet on the streets of Tennessee, close to that Smoky Mountains, and then I think it's called Green Valley, they instantly fall in love. Of course, they don't admit that. They try to get to know each other. Jethro has no idea who Sienna is. He doesn't watch movies. He's not into the Hollywood hype. So when he finds out who Sienna is, it doesn't really go so well. So don't think that just because you know that trope of damsel in distress being rescued, that you're going to understand like that's what this book is all about. Yeah, it starts out that way, but Sienna is a very strong character. She has worked really hard for where she has gotten in Hollywood, but it's tiring. It is really wearing on her. This is a lovely, steamy read, so be fair warned, it is an adult romance, but it's a lovely read. I always enjoy sitting down with a Penny Reid and getting wrapped up in one of her stories. Just to recap a little bit on the Penny Reid series, remember, it's really good if you go to Goodreads and you just put in Penny Reid and it'll show you all of her series. And I always think of her books more in terms of who the characters are. So this is Sienna and Jethro's story. I've read probably 4 or 5. I read Neanderthal Seeks Human, Neanderthal Marries Human, Friend Without Benefits, Love Hacked, Beauty and the Beard. Beauty and the Beard is part of that Knitting in the series, but it also then takes you into the Winston Brothers series. So then it's Beauty and the Mustache and Truth or Beard, and then Grin and Bearded. And yes, they all have beards in them because those are the covers. And there's a lot of chatter about the covers. Whenever I reviewed Grin and Bearded on Facebook this week, I did get a comment about how much they hate the covers because they look like cross stitch, which is kind of a weird thing to put cross stitch on the cover of a whole series that's about guys with beards. I don't know why they do that. I like them, but I think that they have definitely generated a lot of chatter. So my next one in this series is called Beard Science. I already have it on my Kindle as an ebook, so I'm looking forward to reading that, but I've got a lot that I've really got to get read here in the next couple of weeks, so I don't know the next time I'm going to get to sit down to read a Penny Reid, but that's the next one in this series, and I'm looking forward to reading that. And then the Knitting in the City series, the next one that I have down for that is Neanderthal Seeks Extra Yarns, but it's just kind of like extra stories that are thrown in there. So here's the other thing Penny Reid does. So her series aren't just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would be way too easy. So like for Knitting in the City, it was 1, 1.5, 2, 3, 4, 4.25, 4.5, 4.75, 5, 6. So it's really weird. Sometimes she throws a lot of extra stories in there or a lot of side stories. I don't know. I love it. It works for me, but it does mean that you're probably going to have to write down her series so that you can keep up with that. And that's another great reason that you should use Goodreads because they already list those numbers for you. So if you look up my review for Grin and Bearded on Goodreads, you'll see Right there is the cover of that. I really enjoy this series. Another catch up that as I've been going through and telling you the books that I'm reading this year, one that I think I mentioned, but I don't know that I put it on my number of books that I've read this year, and that is The Little Black Book, 6-minute meditations that I read for the Lent series. My neighbor gave it to me. She goes to the local Catholic church here in Fayetteville. I'm not Catholic, but I do love observing Lent. I think it's a wonderful thing. We've got a little cardinal over there eating lunch currently. But I did finish this, and I just wanted to throw that out there because I don't think I put it in my original numbers of the books that I've read so far. Another book that I finished this week was an audio book. It is The Children of Blood and Bone by Toni Adeyemi. I'm going to say it that way. I think that's right. Then I looked her up, and then I listened to her talk on, I think it was Amazon. There's a little video on Amazon under her author page. So super interesting. I've been listening to this book for a while. I want to say it was like 17 hours long on audio, which yeah, it's long, but it is so good. It is a YA fantasy, and for me, I feel like the young adult authors really, they know what they're doing when it comes to fantasy. They get their following early on, and people stick with them because they are so good. So a lot of the booktube people that are usually, I would say the average age of a YouTube booktube person is probably 25, would be probably the average age. And a lot of them still read young adult fantasies if they are a fantasy reader, because it's just really well done. But I've been listening to this for, I would say, the last month, maybe even more than that, because I got it in Overdrive through the public library, and it would return itself because I didn't make enough progress. And then finally last week, I'm like, look, I'm gonna get through this one. And when I say that, it makes it sound like I didn't love it, and I absolutely love this book. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. A lot of that is probably due to the fact of the narrator. She is awesome. She has a great inflection for her voice. She won awards. Well, it was written it was published in 2018, so it's probably one of the best audiobooks in 2018 by Libra. Libra, I think, is the company that I follow where they do audiobooks. And she won numerous awards for narrating this audiobook because it's so good. This was a great week to actually finish this book, because at the end of the audiobook there is an author's note where she talks to you, and I then had to go and look it up in print, and then I used that in my review on Goodreads, because she talks to you about the fact that she wrote this book because of social injustice. So yes, it's fantasy, yes, it is a made-up place, but the social injustice, that thread, really runs through this book. And it's because a certain group of people who have magic in them are discriminated against, and those who are other, namely the royalty, the people that are running the area or the region, they call them maggots because they so look down on them. So a lot of racial injustice is in here, that social structure that right now we're just all really talking about and trying to learn more. This is the perfect book to put it outside, so it's abstract. No, it's not Alabama, it's not Cincinnati, so it is abstract, but it shows that this is a thread that runs through our history. It doesn't matter what country you're in, it doesn't matter what city you're in, social injustice runs through our culture. It is book 1 in a series, so I'm interested to see where it goes. You can definitely tell it's a series when you get to the end of this book, but it does stand on its own. Like I can read this and I could just stop, but I really like it, and especially if this narrator does the second book, I will listen to it. I don't care if it's 17 hours or 24 hours of listening. It is awesome. This is her debut book. The author of the book, Toni Adeyemi, is of West African heritage. She's a Nigerian American. That does come through within the book, I feel like, because of the culture that she is able to put in there. The name of the series is Legacy of Orisha. Orisha is the region that we keep talking about. The name of the second book is Children of Virtue and Vengeance, and it came out in December of 2019. I haven't read it yet. So this book basically follows 4 young people. Both of them are sets of siblings. So Zaylee and Zane, and Anan and Amari are from very different worlds. Amari is a princess, Anan is a prince. Zaylee and Zane, out in the villages, they are the ones that Anan and Amari's dad come out and tax and punish, and there's lots of violence. This is a very violent book. But the description of the landscape, the description of the culture, the way that the author talks about family and loyalty and a sense of purpose, it just is beautiful. there's a quest for power between the people who hold the magic. Zélie is a magi. You find out that there are other characters in the book that are magis. Magis are, their purpose is to save the people. They have already announced that there will be a movie of Children of Blood and Bone, and I think it's going to be amazing. Just think of all those fantasy movies that you watch, that with a group of people that are on a quest and trying to save a people, magic, fantasy, it's all in there. It's going to be lovely. I gave this book a 5-star review on Goodreads because it is that good. So those are the only 2 books that I finished this week, bringing me up to 27 books that I have finished this year, which is right on track. I try to make sure that I'm reading at least 1 book a week, and then some weeks I don't get 1 finished, some weeks I get 2 or 3 finished. Usually that comes up to around 60 or 70 books a year. I like to shoot for 70. I'm happy when I get to 60, 70 books a year. It will be interesting if that continues now that I am no longer going to be in the library and I will be in the classroom. That is very different. A lot of my take-home work in the library was coming home and reading books so that I would have enough to recommend for the upcoming weeks when the classes came in. Now that I'll be back in the classroom and teaching a English curriculum, I may not have as much time for reading, and that's sad. So now let's talk about some of the books that I've recommended this week. So just to recap, I am unpacking my books from all being packed up last year because of a house situation with a soot issue where they were all taken and cleaned. So now I'm unpacking all of those books, and as I'm unpacking them, then I am giving you some recommended reads for your summer reading list or just for your to be read list. So here are some books that I recommended this week. That means that I unpacked them, I made sure that there was either a review on Goodreads or that I reviewed them, but sometime in the last 40-ish years, I have read these books. I try to recommend a book a day, and we are now currently on this 22nd day of summers. I've recommended at least 22 books this way, and I really enjoyed it. It makes me sit down every day, look at a book that I've read in the past, make sure that it has the review. So this book is not for the faint of heart. I picked it up because of the cover. I am a sucker for a good cover. It is How to Cook a Tart. It's a novel by Nina Killham. Also, another thing that I look at on books whenever I'm deciding whether I want to pick them up or not is when another author gives the recommendation on the front of it. And this one is by Jennifer Cruzy, which I've talked to you. I recommended a couple of her books before. She actually does the recommendation on the front of this. Wickedly intelligent, succulent, and true. Every woman who has ever picked up a spoon with guilt in her heart should read this and rejoice. My thing here is that it's misleading. To me, it's misleading. This looks like kind of a cozy mystery cover. It's hot pink. It's got the knife on there. You know that it's a murder mystery. It's not cozy. It is really good. I enjoy it. It definitely does has humor in it. With that hot pink, it better have some humor in it. It has humor in it, but it's not to the faint of heart. Especially the end. It has a kicker of an ending, but it's not pretty. It's pretty graphic. It's pretty disgusting at some points, but I do really enjoy this book. On the back of it, some other authors who've given their thoughts. Anthony Bourdain, who is more known as a cook than for his books Kitchen Confidential and A Cook's Tour. Tracy Chevalier, which is Girl with a Pearl Earring, and I loved that book. And then Jennifer Cruzy and Patricia Volk. So some interesting authors had given their words on this, and it is a debut novel, so that's pretty impressive when you have people of that caliber giving you the recommendation for your book. Depending on what you're looking for your summer reading list, I thought it was a good one to recommend to you. You can probably guess a little bit of what it's about, but How to Cook a Tart is the story of a woman who finds out that her husband is cheating on her with a young tart, and she is contemplating what she wants to do about that, how she's going to handle it, and then, you're not going to guess how she handles it. So another book that I recommended this week is one of my favorites. It's called Milk and Honey. This is a book of poems. It was highly circulated a couple of years ago. I had students who had recommended it to me, and then again, it was one of those that just got a lot of buzz. It is definitely adult poetry. I know I had students that recommended it to me, but once I got it and read it, I knew that this would not go on my high school shelves. And when they questioned me, I'd say, just look at page 13. Look at page 13. That can't go on our high school shelves. So it's beautiful poetry. If you're a woman and you have yet to pick up Milk and Honey, even if you're not a big lover of poetry, you need to read this book. I feel like it really caters to the group of us who, like on Pinterest, often read little bits of poetry or little bits of inspirational verse on there. It's kind of in that vein. That's where it gets its inspiration. She has fought her own battles. It's been very difficult for her. She's had a lot of struggles in her life, and her way of dealing with those struggles is to write poetry about it. They're short poems, and they also have lots of illustrations. She does her illustrations and her poetry, and they're like little line drawings. It's really enjoyable. Here's the one that's on the back of the book. This is the journey of surviving through poetry. This is the blood, sweat, tears of 21 years. This is my heart in your hands. This is the hurting, the loving, the breaking, the healing. It's Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. There's a deer in the backfield. Very close. I think that this is a short book of poetry that you are going to want to purchase your own copy. I am a big library user. I get all of my audio and ebooks from the library. I pick up my books at thrift stores or used bookstores or pass them around between people, but very seldom do I feel like I need to go out and pay full price for a book. This is one that I would recommend. Just go and buy it. It is a paperback. It's only $15. I'm getting no kickback on this book, but it's one that you're going to want to own because the poems are just ones that you will return to. Sometimes you're in the mood for poetry. This is one of those books. Highly recommend it. I read this book back in 2015. There was a lot of buzz when it came out. She has more than just this book, and I've read some of her others. Sun and Her Flowers. I would also recommend Googling her. She has some spoken poetry where she performs these poems, and they're just beautiful. Another way to get a taste of it, to decide if you enjoy her writing, is to go to Pinterest and put in RUPI KAUR. You can also put in Milk and Honey, and her poems will show up. So highly recommend, especially for your summer reading, Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. Another book that I recommended this week was The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is a whole series, so I recommend the whole series. I've read the whole series. This book is by Stieg Larsson, a Swedish author. One of the really cool things about this book is he wrote the trilogy and then he died suddenly, tragically. So he never actually saw his books become the success that they were. They were published in Sweden, and then they were translated in many other languages, and when they came to America, they were a huge hit. They've been turned into movies. There are 3 in his particular series. The series are The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest. So I have read all 3 of those. After that, there was another author who picked it up. David Lagerkrantz then took over and continued writing the series with Larsson's notes, and then I think beyond that. Stieg Larsson had made notes on continuing the series, and the author picked up and did that, and then I'm not sure how many books past that there were notes for, and then he just continued in the spirit of it. 3. There are probably 5 books beyond the 3 that Stieg Larsson wrote. It's all dark. The books are dark, the movies are dark, they're graphic, there are horrible atrocities that take place in these books, so that might make you a little uncomfortable, but they're really good thrillers. The name of the series is called the Millennium Theory. I definitely would say that this is a thriller in the truest sense of thriller. They are dark, they're fast. I know that whenever I read the first book, for the first, I don't know, maybe even 50 pages, it's so detailed and it's kind of dry. Like, I know whenever I started reading it, I thought, why did they tell me to read this book? I'm not going to like this book. But you have to get the background and get set up for what's going to happen in this thriller. It's a family saga that has so many twists and turns you will not see them coming. Michael Blomkvist and Lisbeth Salander are 2 of the best worked out characters in literature. I think that is one of the reasons why people pick up the series and read it and then reread it and reread it and enjoy the movies. Those 2 characters are so complex, so well thought out. It's a thriller of modern corruption and the whole family saga. You don't really understand what's going on for the first part of this book. It takes some time to get this whole story set up, and then you start getting glimpses of what might be happening. It's not one that you're going to figure out quickly. So just know that it has that heavy start, but stick in there. So when you think of summer reading, you are not thinking cozy mystery or beach read. You are thinking a thriller that really pulls you in. This would be a great series for you. This is another one that when I did the Goodreads recommendation this week, I had lots of chatter. So many people really enjoyed getting taken in by this whole thriller series. So these 2 kind of go together, but it's really the author that I want to talk about more than the book, and that is Carl Hiaasen. So I updated the review for Hoot, and then I also updated the review for Stormy Weather. I've read lots of Carl Hiaasen. I love him. So Stormy Weather, you can see it's got a monkey there on the cover, and that's for a reason, because he is one of the characters, this crazy monkey. In the story, he is one of the interesting characters that Carl Hiaasen comes up with. This is number 3 in the Skink series. Skink is one of the characters. When you're talking about it being the Skink series, you do not need to read these in order. He's just one of the characters that Carl Hiaasen pulls out. All of the stories that I know of take place in Florida. Carl Hiaasen loves Florida. He loves old Florida. He writes for the Miami Herald, and most of his stories, if not all of them, take place in old Florida. By old Florida, I don't mean that it has to be, you know, like back in the 20s or the 30s. Most of his books are modern novels, so think more like 90s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Most of his novels take place that kind of modern, but they take place in the small Florida towns that still have a lot of character to them. I've read several other Carl Hiaasen books that I really enjoy, like Skinny Dip and Sick Puppy. They're also adult novels, so remember that Carl Hiaasen did start out writing adult novels. He then did branch off and write some young adult novels, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Carl Hiaasen likes to talk about environmentalism. In Stormy Weather, Florida is getting ready to be hit by a hurricane. There's a couple, Max and Bonnie are on their honeymoon there at Walt Disney World when they find out that this hurricane is going to hit southern Florida. So Max decides that he is going to go down there and check it out. He's taken his trusty video camera. He thinks that his friends back home are going to love this. So he goes down to document this hurricane. He has no idea what he's getting into. Carl Hiaasen has a signature flair for humor, really creating characters that you crack up. These people are just so real. I love his satirical wit. Stormy Weather is told from multiple points of view. It's another thing that I like about Carl Hiaasen. You're gonna love meeting Skink if you have not already met Skink in other Carl Hiaasen books. He is a hilarious character who just tells it like it is, and he is gonna make sure that people get what's coming to them. Any Carl Hiaasen would be a great summer read, but I love Stormy Weather. So after his success with writing for adults, Carl Hiaasen did publish a number of books for young adults. This one is called Hoot. You may not have read this, but you may have seen the movie. It was turned into a movie by Jimmy Buffett, who makes a cameo appearance, and that actually is more than a cameo appearance. I think he's a pretty main character. But the author also makes a cameo appearance in that movie. Well done movie, well done book. A lot of teachers read this to their classes. This is one of those books where I was talking to you about that I may do it because I'm a librarian, but I do like to look at it. But if you open a book and you look at where the cataloging information is, this one does say burrowing owl, owls fiction, environmental protection fiction, and Florida fiction. Remember, Carl Hiaasen often writes about Florida, and Florida has its own character. Florida becomes a character in Carl Hiaasen's books. So this particular book was written for young adults. It did win the Newbery Honor Award. You meet several unforgettable characters in this particular book too. Roy Eberhardt, the running boy, and frankly, the burrowing owl becomes a character in this book. I listened to the audio version of this book. It would be a great choice if you're going on family vacation and you want to get an audiobook for everybody to enjoy, the whole family. Everyone will enjoy this book. It's a great listen. And because they are set in Florida, any of Carl Hiaasen's books would make a great summer read. We all want to be in Florida, let's be honest. Another one that I have reviewed in previous videos, Odd Thomas by Dean Koontz. I looked up the movie and I watched that this week, the Odd Thomas movie. It was on Amazon Prime. I've seen the movie before, but I forgot how much I love it. The books are quirky, the movies are quirky. I highly recommend any Dean Koontz. Odd Thomas is the first one in the Odd Thomas series, which probably has about 20 books. I've already book talked it in other videos, so I don't want to do it too much. Thomas is known as Odd Thomas. People sometimes just call him Odd. Dead people come to Thomas to seek justice for the crimes committed against him. The local police chief knows that Thomas has this ability, and all of a sudden there's something that's getting ready to happen. Normally, Odd Thomas just takes care of something that's already happened, but in this particular instance, he finds out that something's about to happen. So this is a new experience for him. But in trying to find out what has happened and keep it from happening, lots of trouble ensues. Super good, thriller, page turning, supernatural. I enjoy the books. I enjoyed the movie. It's quirky. You may have never seen it, so look it up on Amazon Prime. So I've had about 22 days of summer, which I know is ridiculous. It is a great perk of being a teacher whenever you do have this summertime off. It makes up for all those days where you work more than your 8 hours. Most teachers, I would say the majority of teachers, work 10 to 12 hours a day during the school year, so it's nice to have this summertime to recoup. And we are in that 22nd day of summer, so I've recommended at least 22 books. So make sure you go back and check the other summer recommendations that I have done so far. So what's on my to be read list this week? I know that I have said some of these that I was going to read last week and I didn't get to it. I try to read for about an hour a day or about 100 pages a day, depending on what I have going on that day. Sometimes that works, sometimes it does not. And this past week I did finish a couple of those books, but I did not get to a couple that I keep saying I'm going to get to. So my new book from Kate Carlisle came in. I'm one of Kate's raters, so I have to have this book read and recommended on several different platforms by the 21st, which is coming up in about 2 weeks. I always like to get it done sooner rather than later, so I will be reading this book this week. I talk about Kate Carlisle in several of my other videos. She's a cozy mystery author, so I will link those videos below. So take a look. If you're a cozy mystery fan, she is my favorite. I keep saying I'm going to read Sounder. I'm going to get it done this week. I'm also going to take this little book along with me. We're taking a trip this week down south, so I'll be in the car and then waiting on people a lot this particular week. I'd rather be reading The Delights and Dilemmas of the Reading Life by Anne Bogel, creator of Modern Miss Darcy. That's how I know her. I got to know her on her blog, Modern Miss Darcy. She talks about books and reading and all the things that I love. So I did get to meet her, and I'm going to read that this week. And then I've had this for 2 or 3 weeks, and I still haven't cracked it open. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the Suzanne Collins, the new Hunger Games prequel. It has not gotten good book chats, good book reviews from the booktubers that I listen to. So, that makes it difficult to dig into this. I'm sure everybody else probably has these too, but I have like these little things that I need to just sit down and actually read through. I have Riesling Rules, Coffee from Williams-Sonoma, and Astrid Lindgren's Most Beloved Sister and Mirabelle. So I'm going to take those and throw those in my bag too for whenever I'm waiting on people this week. Reese did release 2 new books that are coming up. You know, normally it's not like she releases the month's read like on the first day or even prior to the month. But with what's been going on with the protests and the riots, it's really thrown everybody for a loop. They've changed their routines, and Reese has done the same. So she did finally release 2 titles that we're going to be talking about in June and July. So I look forward to looking those up and getting those. So do you love to read? Do you love to talk about books? That is why I started doing these book chats. I love to talk about books, and with being sequestered, being quarantined, doing the stay-at-home measures, I've not got to talk about books with people as much as I usually do, and I miss it. So help me build this community for readers so that we can talk about books, we can talk about what we're reading, what we want to read, and new book news that is coming out. Don't forget that if you're an Amazon Prime member, that there are the Amazon Prime Reads. So at the beginning of every month, you can go and check out several new books for free. This week I did hit my limit on Overdrive. Did you know that you can only hold 15 books at a time? I hit it all the time, and then I have to go through and delete things that I don't want. I did share my summer reading list video on Instagram and Facebook, so hopefully you follow me there. I also shared an Edgar Allan Poe poem, A Dream Within a Dream. It was a video on YouTube. I linked an article from Zora Neale Hurston. She's one of my favorite authors. I've book talked her several times with Their Eyes Were Watching God, and there's a great article on there where she interviewed one of the last living slaves. And so take a look at that article. I constantly share the Save With Stories. It's hashtag Save With Stories that was made out by Jennifer Garner during this quarantine time. But there are some great famous people that are reading children's books right now on that particular platform. I've already shared with you some of my favorite podcasts, The COVID Diary, and then some of the other podcasts that I routinely listen to, like Joe Rogan and This Podcast Will Kill You. So a couple more that I shared this week. Skimm, I listen to the Skimm podcast every day that it comes on. And then another one that I listened to this week is This Is Why We Drink. It's very similar to My Favorite Murder, which is my favorite podcast that I listen to. That's a true crime podcast. On their recommendation, I went over and listened to And That's Why We Drink. And it is more of a paranormal true crime podcast, but I enjoyed that. So you might want to take a look at that podcast. This week on BookTube, I have tried to catch up with Noveltea, and then one of my former students has one. It's called Jacob's Reading Corner. I've been watching a lot of his BookTubes. When I was walking with my cousin this week, she said, you know, maybe that should be your spiel on your book chats, would be books and beverages. So today, I'm showing you my beverage. I am making, and I make this every day, but lemon, cucumber, mint, throw it in with water. let it sit in the refrigerator overnight, and it is amazing. Like, I could drink this constantly. I love cucumber lemon water. So that's my beverage for today. I am trying some new taping measures today. I am using my camera and my phone to hopefully upload those to my phone. I really enjoy filming these, but whenever I have to then upload them and edit them and try and get them to move from iMovie over to YouTube, it takes forever. So I am still looking for your recommendations on how to make that a smoother process. My dog was really sick on Thursday, which was also our anniversary, so we had big plans and then didn't end up getting to do anything but take her to the vet, and we are so thankful that she is bouncing back. But we did get to binge watch Confession on BritBox. If you like Broadchurch, if you like true crime, this is I know Broadchurch is not true crime, but this is a true crime mystery series on BritBox. I think there are like 6 episodes, pretty fast. But again, we were trying to just make her sit still and recuperate. So we sat and watched that, binge watch it, and it was amazing. I loved it. Highly recommend Confession on BritBox. So as always, I am happy to be your friendly librarian. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you're looking for, what you're reading, what you want to read, how you feel about the books that I've talked about. Follow me for more book love on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, and Goodreads. Let's be friends. Hit the like and subscribe button below so that I know that you're watching and that you're enjoying these. Comment, email, text, message, just talk to me. Tell me what you're reading. Tell me what you want to read. Tell me what you're looking for. Keep in touch. Enjoy.